Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X Twitter at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. Yesterday was some kind of anniversary for the first Wonder Woman movie, officially directed by Patty Jenkins and written by Zack Snyder and comic book Wonder Woman legend Alan Heinberg. It was a beautiful story by Zack and Alan and a great screenplay by Alan. I mean, isn't that brilliant that a comic book writer that actually understood this character actually was involved with telling its story and formulating its screenplay? It's something that's not happening very often in CBMs. Now, James Gunn has implemented Tom King to work on the Lantern show. Let's hope it has the same effect as the first Wonder Woman. There is no question that the first Wonder Woman movie is a result of many creative hands. Zack Snyder almost certainly directed all the action in that movie because, I mean, for example, the people's favourite moment from that film, No Man's Land, lit the blue touch paper. It's a beautiful scene and it has so much narrative context to it of this woman, you know, this man, Steve Trevor, saying, you can't do this. And she says, no, I'm doing this. I'm going to save these people. I'm not just here to, just to, do this, what you want me to do. I'm going to save lives here. I'm going to make a difference. So it's a really, when we talk about feminism in New Hollywood, actually, this is quite feminist, this moment as well. But it's a beautiful way of showing a woman taking control of her own destiny. So it's a beautiful moment. All the beautiful moments from this film are from Zack Snyder and Wonder Woman scribe Alan Heinberg. But there's no question when you look at the costume, it was a lot darker in BVS, Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. Some fans said her costume looked like Xena, warrior princess. Well, I hate to break it to you, but Diana Princess Diana from Themyscira is a warrior fucking princess. So it makes sense, right? It's a beautiful costume. But Jeff Johns absolutely brightened up that costume. Whether you think that's right or wrong, I think the brightened up costume looks good, but there's an inconsistency of trying to change things all the time. One of the biggest problems of the DCEU, Snyder did one thing, the studio did another. So there's no question about it. And basically the third act, which so many critics derailed and hated, was a studio implemented third act, a CGI battle. Now, personally, I really enjoy that third act. I think it's brilliant that Diana chooses love and she has to choose love. And when she goes, goodbye, brother, and she kills him. It's a brilliant, powerful moment. So I never hated that third act. Some people don't like the standard superhero fighting a supervillain. A lot of people don't like it in Man of Steel. I'm a bit like that with the third act of Man of Steel, the final battle. It's good, it's cool, but sometimes it's also interesting to do something like what the Batman did within what Matt Reeves did within the Batman. It doesn't mean superhero and supervillain battles are bad. It doesn't mean the third act of Wonder Woman is bad, but critics didn't like it. But critics mostly loved that film. The problem is, and it's typical of the DCEU, Wonder Woman was absolutely interfered with. But it's a weird film because it looks like a consistent movie done by one director, but it's clear that Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns brought in Patty Jenkins. There's this kind of out of context feeling that Zack Snyder brought in Patty Jenkins. This simply isn't true. Zack Snyder brought in another female director who had creative kind of disagreements with the studio. That's why Johns moved her on. Johns took over a lot of aspects of Wonder Woman. I actually believe that Zack Snyder had a brilliant handle on Wonder Woman. I think Gal Gadot was a tremendous Wonder Woman when Zack Snyder was directing her, and he had the narrative for her story in his mind, and he was allowed to execute that narrative. But it is an interesting film to really look back on, because as we wait for Gunn to tell us Wonder Woman's future, and she has got a future, there was another picture of the Justice League from the comics on Gunn's Instagram story, and Wonder Woman is there. Wonder Woman is going to be involved in DC Universe, but it's very, very doubtful that Gal Gadot, will be his Wonder Woman. And it's clear he's a bit nervous about announcing this because something's going on. It is weird. We know who's playing Superman. We know who's playing Supergirl. We know who's playing Guy Gardner. We know who's playing so many of these heroes in DC Universe, but we don't know who's going to be playing Wonder Woman. It's weird, and I've spoken about this a great number of times, that in the end, if you don't want Gadot to play Wonder Woman, because Gunn and Safran, cancelled Wonder Woman 3 from Patty Jenkins. And, if you think I'm wrong about Zack Snyder doing most of the good things in that first Wonder Woman film, well, as I've told you before, watch Wonder Woman 2017, then go and watch Wonder Woman 1984. How the fuck is the same director that directed Wonder Woman 84 responsible for the first Wonder Woman? We've been through this a great number of times, but I think it's important when people ask why the DCEU failed. Studio interference, right? You put Christopher Nolan in charge. Nolan wanted Snyder, and Nolan wanted to, write the main films with Goya, while Snyder directed the main films like Superman, Batman. That was the plan. Once Man of Steel didn't make the money the studio wanted, then they didn't want Goya involved. So Nolan walked as well, but he'd still be an executive producer on the DCEU, mostly. Not all the way through, but like the Snyderverse portion of that. It's like recently, they're doing a 300 TV show and Zack Snyder will be a producer, probably an executive producer. So Snyder fans have jumped on it and said, Snyder's coming back to WB. Snyder isn't coming back to WB. He's just going to get an executive producer credit. That's it, because he made that first movie. I think kind of the sequel of 300. I think they've done 2 or 3 movies. I think he's a producer on those movies because he did that first movie. That's how making films works. It doesn't mean Snyder is coming back. If they're willing to cancel Superman and Lois so they don't have any competing kind of DC properties or Superman properties, they're not going to restore, Henry Cavill's Superman for the Snyderverse. My advice to Snyder fans, be ready if James Gunn's Superman is a disaster and it flops. Then you have an opportunity. Until then, we simply do not know. We've seen Gunn do a lot of selfies. He seems to be doing more selfies than actually making a movie. I'm sure that's not true. But they're very, very nervous and they want you to think everything in the garden is rosy. We recently saw a picture of where they're going to be shooting the Kent farm. It doesn't look as picturesque as the location Smallville, the TV show, used. Or, the picturesque kind of location that Dick Donner used in Superman 78. Even Superman and Lois chose a really picturesque location. I'm hoping they haven't done it up yet and it looks a lot better in post, because right now it looks very, very bland. And Gunn has a lot to compete with in terms of Superman media. We spoke yesterday how Smallville saved Superman. There's no question about that. Whatever your favourite version of Superman is, favourite adaptation, Smallville reinvigorated the love people had for Superman and made plenty, new Superman fans. It's a bit like The Phantom Menace that a lot of older fans hate, but it did bring in a new generation of Star Wars fans. Something that Disney Star Wars have been unable to do. Lucas knew what he was doing. He got it. And Gotham Miller on Smallville absolutely got that. And what that Wonder Woman movie, that first Wonder Woman movie does, because we've already seen her in BVS, and it's interesting because I do believe that first Wonder Woman movie went through a lot of changes. If you look at her first appearance in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, her attitude is very different. So we don't get any cameos, but we do get Bruce Wayne sending her an email and sending her that picture she was after in BVS. So there is a connection to BVS there. But that's where it ends. They try and avoid having too much connection to the Snyderverse. But Snyder was very much involved in Wonder Woman, in putting that film together as much as they would let him. Now, if you look at Wonder Woman 84, where was Alan Heinberg? As I said earlier, Alan Heinberg had written the story with Snyder for the first Wonder Woman movie. He wrote the screenplay. Such a successful movie critically and financially. She got rid of Snyder's VFX team. What a disaster that is. Because the VFX, if you compare the VFX of Wonder Woman 84 to the first Wonder Woman, it's like piss and shit. It's like chalk and cheese, isn't it? The VFX in Wonder Woman 84 is terrible, and the VFX in Wonder Woman 2017, well, it's very Zack Snyder. The choreography, the cinematography, we see it there in No Man's Land. I mean, there's no way that, anybody but Snyder shot that. That is a Zack Snyder sequence. We all know that. But Patty Jenkins got credit. In Batwoman, we hear Batwoman say in the series, I don't want, a man getting credit for a woman's work. Well, in Wonder Woman 2017, a woman got credit for a superior male director's work. The irony isn't lost on me there. And as I say, this was the problem with the DCEU. That's why it failed. The problem is you brought Snyder on. Snyder and Goyer and Nolan had a vision within Man of Steel. You let them cook. You let that vision cook. Because at the end of the day, Man of Steel wasn't a flop. You should have went with it. At least let them finish. I started, so I'll finish. But what they did, they kept on changing things. The colour palettes, the colour of the costumes. And it simply didn't work. How do you go from Man of Steel to fucking what they did with Shazam? And what they did to Superman in Shazam? How do you go from Man of Steel and BVS to Justice League? This panic. Let's fix it. Let's be like the MCU. And it didn't work. Because, as I've said many times, what I loved about the Snyderverse, it was a stark contrast to what Feige was doing with the MCU. It wasn't so colourful. It was it was like Gladiator-like, wasn't it? Zack does see these heroes as gods. Now, it's clear that Snyder sees Superman as a god. I don't see Superman as a god, and I think I just watched a Smallville episode called, I forgot what it's called now, but basically everyone's calling Clark a god. They're bowing to him. He's the traveler. This Veritas group have been, protecting him for centuries. And one of the disciples turns on Clark when he realizes he's been running away from his destiny and he refuses to kill Lex Luthor. And Chloe, his friend, says an interesting thing. It's time for you to play God. She's hinting that he should kill Lex before he gets the apparatus that can control Clark and maybe turn him against the world, because Superman can be a danger in the wrong hands. Clark rightly says, I never asked anyone to treat me like a god. If I kill Lex Luthor, I'm no better than he is. That's who Superman is. Now, people may try and attempt to turn Superman into something else, and I think Snyder tried that, and a lot of fans resisted. As I say, some people think the Snyderverse, I said this the other day, didn't I? Some people think the Snyderverse is poetry in motion, And some, especially in terms of Superman and Batman, those fans, those hardcore fans, believe that, you know, what Snyder did to those characters is blasphemy. Now, I don't. I do think it's poetry in motion. And I love Superman 78. I love Smallville, but I also love what Snyder did. I don't think you're wrong as a fan if you see Superman as a god, or if you don't see Superman as a god. That's, you know, I suppose that's, it depends on your point of view, doesn't it? And I think that's okay. But I think what Smallville are trying to do in this Quest episode is say, all these people see him as a god, but Clark doesn't see himself as a god. So you've got this brilliant Wonder Woman film, and you don't use the people that made that film great. Because everybody celebrated that film apart from the third act. And again, I didn't think it was a disastrous third act, but critics didn't like it. But ultimately, it's a successful film. I think Chris Pine's casting was very important because he protected Gal Gadot's, let's say, weaknesses as an actor. Because she's not the strongest of actors. So by having Pine there, it protected her. It protected her weaknesses. And she did come across as a really good Wonder Woman. But it was, in terms of performers and cast members, it was a very collaborative effort. You have all these members of Steve Trevor's team that are interesting, diverse characters as well. They were very important to the film. What happened to them in Wonder Woman 84 was that Jenkins moved so far away from the first film purposely so she couldn't use Steve Trevor's secretary, who was wonderful, who couldn't use the Indian guy or the Italian actor guy who was one of my favourites, right? You've got these great kind of collaborative cast members and you couldn't use them. So you lost the heart from the first film already. What have you got? You've got Cheetah, a crappy, maligned version of Cheetah who doesn't work on any level. Not the actress's fault who played her, right? Barbara Manova. It wasn't her fault. It was the development of that character. Talk about fucking wasting Cheetah. Cheetah's a great character in the comics and in animation. And that was a lost opportunity. But I believe the first film was beautiful. I really do believe it. The score was beautiful. The cinematography was beautiful. We'll never know who directed what in that movie. But there's no question that Jenkins can't do action. She can't do action at the end of the day. We all know that. All you have to do again is watch Wonder Woman 84 and compare it to the action in the first Wonder Woman. There's great action in the first film because Snyder was there showing her what she needed to do. Imagine that. I go in as a raw director, and I've directed a bit, but I go in as a raw director. I've never directed a huge movie, of course. But think about it, right? Would they tolerate my inexperience and just let Snyder come in and do things that I couldn't do? No. But because she's a woman, they cover for her. They cover for her weaknesses. And this is the problem, everyone. And this is the problem with the first Wonder Woman. It's not a problem within the movie we see, but within the production. And it's a core problem of why the Snyderverse and the DCEU ultimately failed. Because it was the interference. And we're back with it again. We go from Whedon, we go to, Berg and Johns, and now we go to Gunn and Safran. It's the same thing. It's interesting, while celebrating the anniversary of the first Wonder Woman film, many fans said to me, we love that film, but we want to look to the future, not the past. What future? A future of AI and CGI. Funny that George Lucas said that there's nothing we can do about AI. It's inevitable. It's not fucking inevitable. If we don't go to the cinema, if we don't pay for these fucking movies, then they won't use AI. It's a war the consumer and good people that care about the art form must keep on fighting. But let me take kind of issue with that whole thing. We're looking forward, not back. The idea of enjoying movies, That's the aspect of looking back. Are you telling me I can't watch Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves because I shouldn't look back? Are you telling me I shouldn't watch Knight Rider or my favourite TV shows or 24 or Smallville as I'm doing rewatching it because I shouldn't look back? And as I say again, what is there to actually look forward to? Well, James Gunn is developing a new DC universe, Mick, and we have no idea what it's going to be like. And once I see it, I'll be able to make my mind up with no bias. It won't be a case of, oh, I love the Snyderverse, so I'm going to hate what Gunn's doing. I will judge it on its merits. Too many people willing to say it's going to be crap. Too many people willing to say it's going to be the bestest ever. Saying we'll be hearing a lot when we see Deadpool and Wolverine, unfortunately, because that's the audience of today. Oh, please let me buy that Deadpool and Wolverine popcorn bucket. Oh my God, you just know so many fucking stupid people can't wait to make these fucking people loads of money via a popcorn bucket. They did it with the June 2 popcorn bucket as well. Makes me laugh how naive people are. But never mind, it's only a popcorn bucket, Mick. It just fucking annoys me, right? I went to the cinema and had some popcorn when I watched the first Wonder Woman film. And I really was oozing about that film. I felt emotional after that film. I felt uplifted. It was a really great comic book movie. And all you had to do is continue with the people who made that movie so good. But you allowed Jeff Johns and Patty Jenkins to do a Wonder Woman 84 movie and toxically move away from what Snyder and Heinberg set up. Isn't that a shame? They quantum leaped Steve Trevor. I can't believe that a legendary great writer, comic book writer like Jeff Johns, thought that was a good fucking idea. If the roles had been reversed and it was, imagine that if the woman didn't know that she was being quantum leap shagged, right? We wouldn't hear the end of it from these nut jobs, right? In Hollywood today. So it's just funny. The hypocrisy of New Hollywood never stops being funny. So you made a great Wonder Woman film. All you had to do was keep going. And it would have been great. But Wonder Woman 84 was protected by COVID because of that film. I think that film has a solid opening, but I think it has a huge drop-off once people realise what a shit movie it is. Once upon a time, Wonder Woman 84 was going to be part of Walter Hamada's reboot of the DCEU. Kind of a Flashpoint kind of movie. Do you remember Grace Randolph spoke about it? That's the thing. Something I still can't openly talk about in detail. It's a bit like I can't tell you, I've told you this before, that the Batgirl movie was better than the 4 final DCEU movies they released. Batgirl, a cancelled movie, was better than Blue Beetle and the Flash movie and Shazam Fury of the Gods and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Again, there was a great version of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and again, studio interference ruined it to make it into a colourful, cheesy, shitty Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom movie. And the Amber Heard thing was ridiculous. If you're not going to replace her, if you're not going to fire her, have her in there properly, you fucking idiots. The movie didn't make a lot of money anyway. So what's the difference? It never made sense. These people are not very smart people at all. They create their own problems. The reason the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing really started is because WB fired Johnny Depp from Harry Potter, from the Fantastic Beasts franchise, but kept her in a job. Do you understand how unfair that is? If Depp kept his role, Amber Heard wouldn't have had so much hate, and they could have kept her fully in the movie. So studio interference is the reason we don't have a DCEU anymore. And really, DC Studios and Gunn and Safran are a new version of studio interference. Now they are the studio. They can do whatever they want. I hope it's going to be something very special. As I've said from the very beginning, this Superman movie has to be the best comic book movie ever made, or at the very least, one of them. It has to be one of the best Superman films, if not the best Superman film, the best Superman adaptation ever made. Do you think Gunn is capable of that? I have my doubts. I've seen some good things that I think, yeah. Then I've seen some red flags and I thought, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And I simply don't know anymore. So I have to be old-fashioned and wait till I fucking see the movie. That's how it works. But we have seen the first Wonder Woman film, and it was a very enjoyable film that made a lot of money, that, got really good Rotten Tomato scores. Who gives a fuck about that anyway? But it was one of the last great CBMs. While the MCU and Disney struggled to give you a brilliant female-led superhero comic book movie, Wonder Woman, the DCEU, Zack Snyder did it. He did it from the first time of asking. There was no culture war in terms of Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. And I'll give Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot credit, because at the time they were celebrating both boys and girls dressing up as Wonder Woman. They were trying to avoid the controversy, and that's what worked. About the marketing as well, WB really didn't want to, oh yeah, she's a hero. They didn't want Gal Gadot making speeches behind a podium where she attacks straight white males. That's what Disney forced Brie Larson to do. So DC did it. I hear people always saying, oh, the MCU was always better than the DCEU. Well, that's a debate we can have forever, but ultimately, when it comes to a female-led comic book movie, and that first Wonder Woman film, the DCEU got theirs right, and both the Captain Marvel movies, well, the MCU got that horribly wrong. And all you have to do is watch the movies. How many people watch the Marvels? Now we know that Captain America made over... Not Captain America, say that again. We all know that Captain Marvel officially made over $1 billion. We'll never know if that's true or not. So actually, Captain Marvel made more money than Wonder Woman. But making more money doesn't make your movie a more superior movie. There's lots of examples in Hollywood history of that. I've spoken to you before that The Wizard of Oz was a flop because it was released just on the eve of World War II. Does it make it a bad movie? Of course it doesn't. So Wonder Woman may have not have made as much money as Captain Marvel, but it was the more beloved movie because it was bathed in positivity. And no question that film had production problems and production disagreements and creative disagreements. Snyder was in there, they were fighting him. You had Jeff Johns there, you had Patty Jenkins fighting Snyder all the time. And Johns and Jenkins got their own way on a lot of things. So it's interesting. I mean, look, you got the kind of Zack's original severed heads kind of thing, and maybe Snyder was getting a little bit carried away there. But ultimately, the first Wonder Woman movie is a very, very special movie. It kind of also has a Superman 78 vibe. I think that's kind of the one thing that Jenkins did herself. But ultimately, whoever was responsible for this, that, and the other behind the scenes, it was a very good, successful movie. And I think looking to the past, especially in terms of art is all about looking to the past. The future can only be looked forward to if there's something to look forward to. And right now, I don't see it. Now, if you want to shield James Gunn without seeing any evidence of what he's capable in terms of Superman, yes, he's made 4 brilliant comic book movies. I agree. There's evidence there. But those 4 movies have also shown that he's a one-trick pony. Superman is a very different character to Peacemaker and Star-Lord. I think, at the very least, if you don't agree with me about James Gunn on other things, we can at least agree with that. And the evidence is there that Gunn is a one-trick pony. Show me something different that he's done. Scooby-Doo. In fact, that's kind of similar to the vibe of his Guardians movies. if you like, in the way he makes movies. And I think this animated series he's doing on Max will be very successful because there he's playing to his strengths. A group of people, underestimated, underdog type of, anti-heroes. That's what they're going to be. So that works for Gunn. But that's no proof that he's not a one-trick pony.